I think the problem is quite straightforward. We have very high enrollment in India, more than 90%, 95% children enrolled in school. But despite being in school for a number of years, many children have not yet acquired basic reading and math. So if you look at our simple way of assessing using a reading tool, you'll see that even in 5th grade, only 50% children are able to read at 2nd grade level. First, you need to figure out exactly what the problem is. And it took us a couple of years to really hone in on the fact that it's really weakness in basic reading and math that's holding children back. Once we were able to identify that, and the tools we used in trying to identify that later began to be called the ASER tool. Then you are also looking for solutions. So really our whole process of understanding a problem, figuring it out, defining it in a way that everyone can understand it, and simultaneously working on solutions. So the assessment part came to be known as ASER, and the solutions part came to be known as teaching at the right level. So teaching at the right level basically is a very straightforward process. The key thing is, rather than teaching children by grade, you teach them by the level at which they are currently. So even if you look at 5th grade, you'll see that there is about 50% who can read, another maybe 20% or so who are able to read at least paragraphs, and a whole tail which can't read as yet. Similar situations exist in different proportions in 4th grade and 3rd grade. So rather than a 5th grade teacher teaching a 5th grade curriculum, you group children by level and allocate the available number of teachers, use appropriate activities for each group, and we find that progress happens very quickly. And therefore, really, at the teaching at the right level, if you look at key elements, there is a different way of assessment. There is a different way in which we think children should be grouped for learning. You need to have mentors who can actually guide teachers through this process and continue to assess your basic progress as you go along. And the challenge is, how do you introduce these in a durable way into school systems so that kids who've been left behind have a really good chance of catching up? In Pratham, we do work in 2 ways. One is direct laboratories where we try out things ourselves, refine them, improve them, make them more effective, and so on. And with the learnings, we then transplant them into other contexts. So first, we've been doing this in India in different state government school systems. And while we've been doing this, JPAL has been evaluating the evolution of this work. Together, I think the JPAL research and the accumulated Pratham experience is now quite known in different parts of the world. And so we've been getting invitations from countries in Africa to come and see whether this kind of an approach would work, because they seem to have the same kind of problems. So it's a first step. We are learning, and hopefully we will have some success.
At the early stage of the reform, they recognized that there are a significant number of students, 26% by their own assessments, that were extremely far behind curriculum level expectations. So the core of the reform was to try and find ways of bringing students that were far behind what grade level expectations were to grade level expectations, and preparing them then to be able to engage with the curriculum as they move through the schooling system. I think any reform that is being implemented inside a system has to confront the realities of the context and the entrenched structure within which the system actually functions. And that structure creates sets of friction, and the core challenge for embedding reforms is to be able to find the right kinds of oils to lubricate those frictions. To my mind, what we learned from what we studied, there were 4 critical frictions that the reform effort confronted. The 4 frictions were the grammar of the state, the way the state engages, talks and shares, and therefore communicates its ideas of reform. the classroom consensus, which as one of the chief reformers said, is in many ways today a victim of the curriculum, the challenge of syllabus completion, and maximizing pass percentages. The teacher, who is embedded in a system of hierarchy and administration, and feels that they are disempowered and victimized, and in a way have been stripped of the ability to actually engage well as teachers in the classroom. And the administrative architecture, the bureaucracy itself, that is structured in a way that undermines the ability of administrative actors to change how they function. But I think most importantly, what these reforms did is that it consistently and regularly for the period of 3 years that we looked at this, stayed on message. And when you stay on message, you end up making very interesting and important subtle shifts. What we noticed a lot just from observing how the school functions and sitting in the staff rooms and listening to the teachers talk to each other is how much more the teachers were talking about the classroom amongst themselves. So even as they were overwhelmed by all the things about the system that pulls them down, they were able to talk about the classroom, and that was a very new and important introduction to the kinds of long-term change that you want to have. In the words of one of the reformers, they inherited a ship that was about to sink. They couldn't destroy it because then the whole ship would go. They had to find ways of steadying the ship and bringing it back up. And that's really what they did with the education reforms. Now, in some senses, the schools are prepared for the next phase, and we can only hope that the next phase comes quickly.